This is Virtus Pro, the organization that won the CSGO major in Rio, but had to play under the fake assumed name of Outsiders, because even though they are now an Armenian-owned company, somehow ESL and Blast and all these other companies have done an incredible investigation to know secretly, really, honestly, they're all owned by the same people, which have ties to oligarchs and by extension, ties to Putin. It's nonsense, and I'm going to expose just how ridiculous it is. This has to stop in 2023. By the way, Virtus Pro are now owned by an Armenian, or say it's a shell company, say whatever it is. Prove it or shut the fuck up. That's what you have to do. I'm a journalist. That's the standard I live by. Prove it or shut the fuck up. Don't assume, blah, 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 blah. Prove it or shut the fuck up, okay? I'll also say your moral grandstanding while, you know, if you're at ESL, while the chairman of your the company that now owns you, Savvy Gaming Group, is Mohammed bin Salman, right? Dropping bombs on kids in Yemen. Still signing off on that, by the way. The largest humanitarian crisis on the planet right now. That's your chairman doing that by design. Yeah, maybe you just have to shut the fuck up for now about taking a stand on any of this. Okay? Because, yeah, Russia bad. Saudi Arabia bad. Yeah? Yeah. US Air Force. Ah, they're the good guys, are they? Ah, must be lovely to have a fucking child's view of geopolitics. Must be nice. So anyway, Virtus Pro, here they are. Rio Championship trophies arrived in Armenia. Welcome home. We share first-hand unboxing, which coincided with the birthday of the Aram Karamnukian, sorry, I butcher his name every time, who is the new co-owner of Virtus Pro.
Рио идеальный для Virtus Pro день, потому что сегодня совладелец клуба празднует свой день рождения. У Арама сегодня день рождения. Это что-то похожее на очень приятный сюрприз, судя по тому, откуда он отправлен. Так, да. Опа. Это Кубок чемпионов мейджора. Он супер тяжелый. Арам, с днем рождения.
Спасибо. Это лучший подарок.
Сейчас мы наш трофей будем украшать. Естественно, армянского флага.
Looks nice. Get a ribbon around it. See the reply. ESL, IM, and MB Carmack. Did you send a trophy to an organisation that was not allowed to participate in your tournament? Does VP have the right to publicly attribute that victory to itself? Will this incident result in any sanctions for outsiders? You are obligated to respond. First of all, I'm going to just break this down. Like, I don't give a fuck. Right? I don't give a fuck. This is just all nonsense. It just shows you're a moron. It shows you're a bitter moron. I get why you're bitter. I know it's terrible what's happening. My views on that are absolutely clear. But I'm going to talk from a purely esports, top-down perspective. Right? This is absolutely fucking stupid. IEM, ESL, absolutely not obligated to respond to your nonsense in any way, shape, or form. But let's just go through the tweet. Did you send a trophy to an organisation that was not allowed to participate in the tournament? The organisation, VP, is the one that funds outsiders. Those players are being paid by Virtus Pro. You make them play under outsiders because you think if you see Virtus Pro on a screen, it's going to somehow promote Putin and somehow it's going to give them an advantage in the war. And so we take sanctions against them and make them be called outsiders so there are no benefits whatsoever to the great Putin's war machine. And let me tell you, it's coming up on a year the war's happened. Man, I'm sure esports is going to really tip that situation. Eventually the war will stop for sure. Right? Like, definitely it's going to be esports that wins it over. Right? So anyway, they do that. Meanwhile, yeah, how many Russian teams are just out there competing, you know, because they don't live in Russia, and so we give them a pass. Team spirit. We don't even know who owns them. Not a problem. Don't know how many times I have to say this. This is a hypocritical nightmare across the board. Organisation remains Virtus Pro. They're called outsiders when they play in ESL and when they play in Blast, even though they're allowed to be called Virtus Pro in Dota tournaments now, and Valve have given that the okay. Right? It's over, guys. Stop doing this stupid stuff. It was always Virtus.pro who funded them. They were always Virtus.pro players taking a salary from Virtus.pro. Does VP have the right to publicly attribute the victory to itself? I'm going to say absolutely yes. Under what law or rule would they not be able to do that? Virtus.pro paid those players. They scouted those players, hired those players, employed those players, paid for the transport for those players. It is their victory. Doesn't matter whether you'd like the org or not. They've paid to assemble that team and sent that team to that event. It is their victory. The end. Then, will this incident result in any sanctions for outsiders? Right, great idea, guys. This will really solve this crisis once and for all. We took inconsistent, nonsensical sanctions against a bunch of teams where we allowed some teams to do things. We turned a blind eye to Cloud9's bullshit. More on that in a few seconds, by the way. We turned a blind eye to that because North Americans just get to do what they want. North American orgs can do whatever they want, and they can exploit a crisis for their own benefit, and no one says a single solitary negative thing about it except old Muggins here, who's the only person that says, if you want to apply principles, let's all apply them consistently, otherwise it's worse than not even applying the principle in the first place in one instance. No, we turn a blind eye to all of that. Now, yes, this will fix it. Outsiders, because of this, can no longer be called outsiders. They need another name now. They have to be called insiders, bad boys. I don't know, but we'll have to change their name. We have to take another sanction against a non-existent organization to satisfy this guy on Twitter. Like, out of your fucking mind. Out of your mind. I saw an HLTV thread about this. I saw some reactions to it out there on Twitter as well. It's a simple issue of just people are fucking morons. Outsiders were never a real organization. It was a pseudonym. It's a pseudonym. That's all there is to it. It's a fucking pseudonym. And they can't figure that out. They think it was a real separate org. With that just so happened, when the ESL and Blast events are on, we'll employ the players that work for Virtus.pro, and then they go back to Virtus.pro. Like, what unworkable nonsense was that? So anyway, this reply from Carmack is one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen. This is certainly an unwelcome surprise, he says. An unwelcome surprise. As VP did not win the title at IEM Rio. They did. Okay? You made them call them outsiders, but the Virtus.pro salary team, the team Virtus.pro scouted and assembled, won the Rio Major. They absolutely 100% did. You made them pretend they weren't Virtus.pro to satisfy sensibilities in the esports world. Reality, they're Virtus.pro. Always were, right? So they did win. You can say they didn't because maybe Intel are upset about it or whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm Richard Lewis, a journalist known for operating in this thing called reality. Okay? Reality. Virtus.pro did win by any conceivable metric. And Virtus.pro does not have the right to misrepresent the IEM Rio results as a VP victory. Again, there is no misrepresentation here. Their players won the event. The end. The trophy was sent to an address in Armenia provided by outsiders. Now, this is particularly interesting because, as I've said many times, the organization is now owned by an Armenian company, not a Russian one anymore, and therefore should not be subject to any sanctions. This guy is publicly saying, we sent the trophy to an address in Armenia provided by outsiders, and we had no idea it was Virtus.pro, despite it being publicly available information. Virtus.pro had been bought by Armenian. Okay, so I'll just bring that up, just so you can see. This is on Esports Insider. There it is. Meet Aram Karamanukyan, or Nukian, the mysterious new face of Virtus.pro. 30th September 22. That's when they did it. That was the big sale. It's publicly available information. They are now an Armenian organization, right? So this is the same guy, by the way, who put out a statement saying, we've done an investigation and we have deemed that Virtus.pro still have ties to oligarchs. Dickhead, you can't even read the fucking news that's been publicly available since September. Oh no, we got given an address in Armenia. They're an Armenian org. So Which one is it then? Are you capable of investigating and finding out the real, true, super secret owners of Virtus.pro? Or are you so incompetent you think Outsiders is a real organisation with an address in Armenia and you didn't know Virtus.pro is now an Armenian-owned organisation? It's one of the two. There's only two options here. I'ma just say this nice and simple. Let's stop the bullshit. Let's stop the pretense. It's silly now, and here's why it's silly, okay? Because I seem to recall there was a rule, wasn't there, about how, listen, Virtus.pro org bad. We can't do business with Virtus.pro. No one should do business with Russian organizations. We have to hurt Russia financially, even in something as niche as esports, to stop the war. Okay then, fine. But riddle me this, right? If that's true, and we have to do it, and Cloud9 went to the lengths of not even paying Gambit directly to bring in their team, then why's this raised absolutely no eyebrows at all? Cloud9 complete Buster signing, okay? So Cloud9 have signed Buster. Interesting. I seem to remember Buster playing for another team, right? So Buster has spent half a year on the Outsiders bench. Well, hang on. We've just established Outsiders are Virtus fucking Pro. So Buster inks a deal with Cloud9 after spending half a year on the Outsiders bench. His removal from the roster coming shortly after the team's 12th to 14th place campaign through the PGL Antwerp Major. The 23-year-old spent close to 5 years as a part of James' system, winning 3 events alongside the Russian in-game leader, including Blast Pro Series Moscow 2019 being the highlight. So what's happened here? Because unless he has been acquired completely free of charge, we've just broke the fucking sanction rule again. I'll notice there's no clarification on any of that. We're not getting into it. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to think about it. Same way we don't think about Gambit being pressured into selling its team because of what was going on with the bullshit. Literally created a web of ridiculous rules where we penalised a Russian organisation who their players had all publicly said were against the war. The org had said they're for peace. That's about as close to the line as you could get, especially back then. You were really risking jail time if you said anything more extreme than that. And they did it, and we still created a set of rules that fucked them over so much they had to give up one of the best teams in the world for what was a reported $3 million to benefit a North American team that had pissed money up against the wall before it, pulled out CS, said they had no interest, and then, we're back now, guys. And everybody clapped and said, this is great. And now they're doing business with benched players from the naughty org, the org that, he's Outsiders, don't call them Virtus.pro. The world will explode if you call them Virtus.pro. I don't even understand anymore how stupid this can get. And so you've got Carmack on fucking social media pretending, because that's a fucking lie. Like, I know Carmack, I know Mikhail, he's not that stupid. You couldn't be. He knows they're an Armenian org. But look, you can just see here, like, another great example where Russians show zero respect and laugh in everyone's faces because the esports community let them abuse the rules and avoid responsibility over and over again. What rule is being abused here? What's the rule? The rule is that when you're at competition, you have to be called Outsiders. But outside of competition, you're not Outsiders. You're Virtus.pro. Virtus.pro never shut up shop. They never went under. They didn't sell all their players. They're still an org. Says there. VP wouldn't respect and never respected the poor sanctions. They fought against them. They said some really unsavory, stupid shit. But let's also be clear. In Dota, a guy drew his head on a map. They fired that guy. They didn't say, he didn't mean it or anything like that. They fired him. They've accepted being called Outsiders at every tournament where that's been a stipulation. They transferred ownership over to an Armenian owner. Why are we so fascinated with this idea that Virtus.pro, they're the org we're going to tunnel in on to penalise for all of Russia's transgressions politically? We're going to punish Virtus.pro and only Virtus.pro, even when they've changed owners and to all intents and purposes are now an Armenian organisation. We're still going to persist in punishing them because they're historically a Russian organisation, historically the biggest Russian organisation. But Forza, you can be sponsored by an oil company. You can be sponsored by Lukoil, whose executives get, suddenly a bad case of the death. That's fine. You can be sponsored by them. Team Spirit, you don't even have to disclose your owners. We don't even care. Fuck it, you haven't left a paper trail. We just know there's one shadowy guy. Wonder where he could be from. Wonder where his money's from. Too late, Richard. Don't worry about it. Gambit, everybody sympathised and thought we feel so bad for Gambit. Just nonsense across the board. All of it nonsense. Performative bullshit. This is how fucked esports is. We can't even do virtue signalling properly. The easiest thing in the world to do. So yeah, I think that's bollocks. I think that's stupid. That was easily one of the stupidest things that I've seen this year. And as I said, ESL, sponsored by 1xBet, right? 1xBet, a company founded by Russians that are wanted for crimes in criminal Russians. But that's okay. We played the Ukrainian organization working with a Russian betting company where the Russians are wanted for crimes in certain countries because of how their casino operates. All fine, all good. Just keep it going. I've said in other videos, so you can go and look it up, I don't think Virtus.pro handled this at all well. I think they've acted like arseholes, but ultimately they've come around and they've done what is to be expected of them. And if they've done what's expected of them, it's over now. You can't keep calling them outsiders when they're not even a Russian org anymore. Stop it. It's silly.